It's hump day once again with reverse redaction, bringing you the headlines, trying to reverse redacting them, but mainly just talking about them. I'm here with Jared Putnam.
Very good. Very good delivery this time.
Man, it was weird.
What was funny last time was that you didn't quite catch it right away.
I didn't catch it at all. I was like, what are you talking about? What did I call you?
Justin, because we were talking about a different Justin.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you're with who? And you're like, yeah, Justin, of course. You're Justin.
It was so entrenched in my psyche that I couldn't dislodge it.
Well, the Justin we were talking about was someone that would entrench in your psyche. So
well, what's funny is you sent me a picture of him on Facebook, and so now every time I talk to you on Facebook or whatever, there's just this big almost like a mugshot of him.
That's great. That just needs to stay there forever.
I'm sure this is fascinating to anyone tuning in, but there's been it's interesting. It's a roller coaster. Every day is a roller coaster of news with our commander in chief, but lately it seems to have been much more of a roller coaster as we see the drama of Trump is going down, going to be impeached, he's going to be indicted. I saw so many people posting, these jail memes, behind bars, and then as soon as the weekend hits, we have the news of the hurricane, we have the news of McCain passing away, and I think that really sucked the wind out of everything else. But you said you saw some headlines that sort of caught your attention as far as McCain goes.
Yeah, well, there was a headline that kind of summed it all up, but the rest, mostly what I've seen that's been kind of interesting is just people's comments and reactions, which is kind of been typically like pretty seething hatred from both the far right and the far left. And
yeah,
so I saw a headline on Facebook last night from George Takei, where he was passing along a story where it said Fox News disables comments for all videos about McCain's death after slew of ruthless attacks, which kind of made me chuckle a little bit. But at the I don't know. I think it's just interesting that both the far left and the far right hate him for different reasons. I asked someone had commented on someone else on my Facebook friends list had posted about him. Someone else had commented and said, "Oh, the guy did so many despicable things," and I'm like, what did he do? I mean, I'm not even being sarcastic.
Yeah.
If he did something that I don't remember or don't know about, like, feel free to, but people just say things like that, it's like, oh, he's terrible. He did so many. Well, what specifically? So they never replied, of course.
Oh yeah.
But it's kind of the same thing on the far right too, where, we talked a little bit last week, I was talking about how, I feel like people, and especially on the far right, like certain things as long as they're an abstract concept. Like if it's Milo, or if it's the gay hairstylist turned conservative commenter or whatever, they love them because they're, they see them as like a convert to their side, which also brings up another interesting thing to me, in that I wonder if it's because we discussed how we don't really see that on the left, where the left doesn't really celebrate conservatives that turn liberal, from what I've seen,
because there's not a lot of them.
Well, true, that's probably another, but I mean, it doesn't, even with the right, it doesn't take there being a lot of them. It's almost like, I think there's probably just as few, even if there's not. I mean, but they take, you know, certain ones and sort of lift them up on a pedestal. So, but I thought about that later, and I thought, like, I wonder if with so much of the right being sort of from the evangelical side, if that plays into it, if it's like, if they almost see it as kind of like a
born again experience.
Yeah, like a religious conversion or whatever. But anyway, that's that's an
interesting observation.
Yeah. So that's just kind of an aside. But anyway, I guess my larger point last week was just talking about how you know, certain things, certain people like that are sort of like an abstract concept to them. And you know, when you encounter somebody in real life who's much more complex, how are people going to react to that? And so I think we kind of see that with McCain, where if you're looking for a patriot, I mean, you know, the dude went to war, he got shot down, he spent years as a POW, he turned down opportunities to, you know, leave imprisonment early because the military code is that, you know, you're supposed to wait until the guys who've been held longer than you are released first. But they figured out that he was, you know, the son of an admiral, and so they were trying to leverage that, and he could have done that, but still didn't. So, you know, so he's done all these things that in so many ways, if you looked at it from a distance, would be, you know, sort of the ideal like vision of the flag waving crowd, but you know, because he became much more moderate of a politician, and especially in recent years is feuded with Trump.
Well, listen, that's not characterizing it exactly right. This wasn't just that he became a moderate. He became an activist for reaching across the aisle. So it wasn't just that he became a moderate, like he just kind of had like these moderate views. He became very vocal and active for certain laws and initiatives that were repulsive to Republicans.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
And it kind of felt like he wasn't doing it just. I mean, yeah, I think he agreed with him, but it almost felt like it was his fervor was, you know, to break this, to break any allegiance to, you know, I don't know. It was almost a finger in the eye to Republicans a lot of times.
And I guess, would you say that's been since he ran for the presidency the last time, or do you think that was a lot?
His whole life. His whole life, he's done that.
Well, but
I mean, his whole, like, not life, of course. He didn't do that by being a POW, but he I think he was a very his personality was very look, I love the guy. I voted for him. And I wanted him to become president, but he was a very opinionated guy, and his opinions were all over the place, you know.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, he was popular enough to get the Republican nominee for president.
Yeah.
Right. You know, I think now in today's climate, you know, that would be extremely, extremely difficult. But regardless, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. But it kind of just underscores what I was going to say in terms of, when, you know, again, like, people like it when it's sort of an abstract concept, when you know, half of all soldiers, when you can think of them as like, you know, being from Texas with 2.5 kids and you know, NRA memberships and all these things. But when you get someone even like McCain, who's gone through hell for the country, people will turn on that, you know. And so suddenly that doesn't really, you know, you get people just saying all these things. Oh, you know, the guy's not a patriot. He's a traitor, just because he supported, you know, because he didn't fall along party lines. So
Yeah, I don't know if that's completely true though. Like I don't think it's because hey he didn't he didn't toe the line. I think in a lot of cases I've been very angry with him, not because he didn't toe the line, but because he took absurd positions. He took positions that were like that angered me. I wasn't angry because he didn't toe the line. I was angry at his position.
Well, I
And I
mean,
think that goes for a lot of conservatives.
Aren't those kind of one and the same thing? I mean,
No.
I mean, like what would be an example?
Campaign finance, like the fact that he like championed campaign finance, which is like something that I believe is a huge detriment to our democracy.
Are you talking about campaign finance reform or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, campaign finance reform with was it Feingold? Him and Feingold teamed up to basically make it hard for people to give money to the people that they like.
In what way? What was his position on it?
What do you mean? What was his position? Was his and that's the thing. His position was that companies and rich people shouldn't be able to give money to the people. Well, they shouldn't be able to influence the debate.
So he was part of helping push the limitations on it.
Yeah, that's what the reform was limiting it to like I think $1,000 or something like that.
Right. Yeah, but I mean,
so it wasn't like I was mad at him because he needs to, stick with the Republicans. I mean, I was mad at him because that's like I was mad at that idea, like that. So, but look, there's a lot of people that got angry with him and for things like that because he kept doing things like that. He kept like voting against things that like were exciting to Republicans. And a lot of times he did it. It was almost like the reverse of not towing the line. It wasn't the fact that he wasn't towing the line. It was the fact that he was just doing it because he felt like it was towing the line to do it. You know what I mean? Like instead of saying like, this is a good idea because of this, or this is a bad idea, I'm not going to vote for this because it's a bad idea because this. It's more like he's saying, I'm going to vote against this because all the Republicans are voting for it. Well, it was very contrarian. It felt very contrarian.
I'm sure he didn't say that though. I mean, he would get politically skewered if he had just said that. So I mean, I'm sure
he did get politically skewered.
Well, he was going to get politically skewered regardless because nobody cares what anyone's motives are. He could have laid out a 97-point plan of why he wanted to do that.
That's not true. People do care.
Oh no, that is absolutely true. People just shut everything off. They don't care about what your reasons are. It's just, did you do what I want or didn't you? And that's the bottom line. But to a certain extent, you're kind of doing the same thing that you accused me of with Ben Shapiro, where you're like trying to read his mind and like, well, he's just doing this to be contrarian. Campaign finance reform, I mean, for me, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it's kind of, again, in the differences that we, view the world where, you don't really have a problem with even if Trump, did try to collude with Russia. From what I've gathered from you, you don't really have a problem with that. No. Because you see it as just like, trying to, find any way to beat your opponent or whatever. I see it as this is a really bad idea. And I understand why the things are in place to prevent that, because you don't want someone becoming beholden to a hostile foreign power in order for them to personally gain from the presidency. I mean,
you're conflating two things. You're assuming that getting information from a foreign power would be this, like they would have to do it under some sort of auspices. I mean,
well, the goal is to prevent that. I mean, yeah, I mean, you could have someone who just prefers this candidate, but the goal is to, it's the same way like what was the general who got fired from Petraeus from the FBI for having an affair. They got rid of him because they don't want people in a compromising position, so that a foreign government could have something on them and use that to influence their decisions. So yeah, it's not necessarily the act itself, but it's the potential for what it could lead to. But I mean, again, going back to campaign finance reform, it's kind of a similar idea to me. I mean, in that you want to put limitations on it so that someone can't essentially buy a candidate.
Well, we can reverse redact that later. I mean, that would take us forever to talk about.
Oh, yeah. That's one of those where it's kind of its own deal. So,
but I mean, to your point about being able to read his mind, I hear you on that. It's just that there were times that he said, I can't remember particular times, but I do believe that he said he was voting against it. That he could go either way, but he was voting against it to bring balance. It's almost like he's trying to bring balance to the force, and it felt, I don't know. It didn't feel the way he did it. McCain, my friend. I love the guy, but he could be so awkward about things.
Yeah. I don't know. It's I guess just to kind of close it off, like I said, it's just been interesting to see just the hatred. And it's not, I've seen other people online talk about people who are our soldiers but who are also liberal and talk about kind of the experiences that they've had with people just, calling them traitors and this, that, and the other. So I don't know. It's just interesting to me to see with McCain where like what more could you do in terms of sacrificing for your country, and regardless of whether it's because of his voting record or because people didn't like the attitude with which he seemed to do it. It's interesting to me that all that will kind of trump, so to speak, no pun intended, his service to the country with the people who are typically the "we need to respect soldiers" flag waving crowd.
Yeah, I get that, and by the same token, though, it's like no conservatives are hating on him because of his military duty. They're most of the people that are hating on him are just trolls, and I think you tend to you're reading way too many comments or something. You just love. Trolls.
It's not even. I mean, like really, what brought this to mind was, I mean, I'm virtually desensitized to larger online commentaries these days, but what really brought this to mind was in the town where I work, a very, very small town, in across the state line in Western North Carolina. The local paper had put out a question online about, what's your thoughts on McCain? I forget how they phrased it. And people were just like, it was just like napalming, John McCain. So I mean, These aren't people, these aren't like fake accounts or, people going to troll. These are like, just your typical Bible Belt voters that you see at the grocery store, real people that are just like that vehemently hate the man now. So anyway.
Yeah. I know. I think a lot of people do hate him, and that does trouble me. I definitely don't hate him. I think I love to see those clips of him, which is weird, but I love to see those clips of him defending Obama. Like, that was a proud moment for Republicans when in the debate he stopped that lady from saying that he was like an Arab.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's kind of, that went viral. It was a proud moment for Republicans at the time. I don't know now. It might be sort of viewed differently by a lot of people, but the left.
I think a lot of like just normal Republicans look at that and say, yeah, that was McCain's a good guy. Yeah. Look, on the internet, not only is a politician an abstraction in some sort of way for most people, he's not a real person. He's just an abstraction for a lot of people. But on the internet, doubly so, because there's no real, you're not face to face with somebody. You're just joining in. It's the worst kind of mob.
Sure.
And so I don't give much credence to mob mentality on the internet.
Yeah, I don't either. I just think it's sort of the reverse in some ways, where people will not in McCain's case. The people who are upset with him would I think feel the same regardless. But just going back to just kind of the abstract concept of it all, I think you're more likely to see some of the opposite, where they'll love someone and on the internet hate them in real life. But anyway, so anyway, we'll move on.
Okay.
You've got another politically oriented headline. Right?
Well, it's not necessarily a headline today. It's sort of, the news cycle, of the modern day is, under the Trump era, in the Trump era is amazingly fast. But yesterday, a big headline was, actually most of the week, a big headline has been that Trump decries Google as suppressing the Republican voice, the conservative voice.
Right.
Now, and I thought it was really interesting because, so how it happened, there was sort of a chain of events in which Fox News did some research and saw that Google was putting up about 94% of their sources were from whenever they would post. So this isn't necessarily on the Google results. This is more on the Google News that you see on their on their page, usually on the mobile. Mm-hmm. They show stories. I actually read it probably every morning, but mine recently. So they are. It's often tailored to the person reading it,
mm-hmm.
right? And so lately, mine has just been full of football stuff. It's just kind of annoying because I'm like, I have my own football sources. I don't need Google News showing me a bunch of football.
So is it kind of like a larger? I don't actually use it myself, but is it kind of like a larger version of what Facebook used to do with the 3 or 4 little headlines, mm-hmm. which they've since taken away to the right side of your page, mm-hmm. where it would be based on kind of just your search results and things like that?
Yeah. I think it's based heavily on your search results. But what I found fascinating in collaboration with this research was that though I'm a conservative and I search conservative things, everything that they showed me. So now they show me all these football results, right?
Uh-huh.
But what they kept showing me is all these Washington Post, and I guess that's not a great example, but very liberal sources and very anti-Trump sentiments. All the headlines were super negative towards Trump.
Yeah, that's weird because that definitely is not you.
Right. That's exactly what I was thinking. So I thought it was weird when I saw it. And then I saw the art. So what happened is the article came out. Drudge posted it. It was like a headline, or it was in red or something. It was highlighted on Drudge, and on Drudge, Drudge said 100%, which is interesting. In their headline, they said 100% of headlines, when really the article said 94, 96%, which I don't know.
He rounded up. That's fine. He just round up.
but so of course Trump loves Drudge, and I think he saw it and he tweeted it out, he did more than tweet it out.
You want me to read the tweet? Yeah. I don't really do as good of a Trump. You actually did a pretty good Trump impression the other day. I don't think I really have a great Trump, but it is enjoyable. It's an enjoyable practice. So Google search results for Trump news shows only the viewing reporting of fake news media. In other words, they have it rigged, all caps, for me and others, so that almost all stories and news is bad. Should be are bad. Fake CNN is prominent. Republican/conservative and fair media is shut out. Illegal? 96% of ... results.
What's all the ...
That's where he goes from one tweet to another.
Oh.
And Stephen Colbert does the same thing. Stephen Colbert reads in the same way, and it's my favorite part of listening to him read Trump's tweets. So anyway, so yeah, ... results on Trump news are from national left-wing media. Very dangerous. Google and others are suppressing voices of conservatives and hiding information and news that is good. They are controlling what we can and cannot see. This is a very serious situation. Hyphen will be addressed. So my favorite part of that is when he talks about, fake CNN being prominent, Republican conservative fair media being supposedly being suppressed, and then it's illegal. No, it actually isn't. But and it's probably not really happening in the way that they're saying. But anyway, go back to what you were saying, because there probably is something happening there. We've seen these agencies are all run by people, and anytime you have people involved, there's going to be some level of slant or bias.
Yeah, and I mean, on top of that, it's not just run. So I think the problem isn't that it's just run by people, like a large swath of people across the face of America. It's run by people in
Silicon Valley,
Valley. Who, and I just got back from LA, and I can tell you, it was a weird experience. I mean, it was an interesting experience just looking around and talking to people there, but
yeah, I was there. I was just gonna say I was there last summer.
Okay.
And yeah, it's
an interesting crowd, right? I mean,
it is a very interesting crowd, especially going from the South, even though there's a lot of stereotypes about the South and things like that for people who don't live here. But yeah, it's so different. It's such a different world.
It's crazy. I mean, the people, my cousin lives out there, and he's trying to get out of there as fast as possible. But to move to North Carolina, near you, actually. But coming from Chicago, which is a pretty, I mean, it's not the South, right?
Right.
It was still night and day.
Yeah.
From Chicago. But so I do some side work in search engine optimization. I work with Google on a regular basis. And believe me, Google is, Google, there is no great love for Google on any side. Even the people that have mocked this. So I'm in a lot of forums, with search engine, SEOs is what they call them. And a lot of, and they're mocking this news, but still, these are people that have, railed against Google and the bias of Google. So Google does definitely have a bias. The question for me is, I'm not sure that that's a bad thing. So it goes to the illegal question mark. I say sometimes I go into this all right. So, but it's obviously not illegal. They're allowed to have a bias. They're a private company, but it does get. We've talked about this before. It does get a little hazy when the company becomes big, and I'm sure you'd agree Or I think you'd agree because I mean, wouldn't you that once a company gets big enough, I mean, back to the campaign finance thing, once they start influencing, so you talk about influencing with money,
Mm-hmm.
how money is probably the least of the influencers out there. Now, money
Mm-hmm.
fuels a lot of these things, but you can do so much more with other kinds of influence. Having somebody on your show, for example,
Mm-hmm.
in front of hundreds of people, uh, parading somebody on the front page of your website, if you are the hugest website you know in the world,
Mm-hmm.
it's much more effective than giving $1 million to somebody.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's why, like you said, I think money is in the grand scheme of things, it's become a smaller influencer now. And that's why you see these social media personalities, who have X number of Instagram followers or whatever, who will get paid huge sums of money to promote a product because their reach is just to so many people, and especially if it's an age demographic or a target audience that a company wants to hit. So yeah, and the scary thing with Google is that, when your company becomes the verb for the thing that you do,
Yeah.
like you've got it's hard to get a stronger stranglehold on the market share than becoming a verb for the thing that you do,
Yeah. Like what do you think of particularly?
Just, I mean, in terms of, do we say I'm going to search for that on the internet, or do we say I'm going to Google that?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes,
Yeah,
when
yeah,
it becomes the thing that we do
yeah.
instead of the place that we go. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like, it's like if you were going to, if you're going to be like, yeah, I love my, if you referred to every car as a Ford, it's like, I love my Ford, or,
Yeah.
or
Like
like
Coke has become synonymous with soda.
soft, yeah. Or, like if you stopped referring to coffee as coffee and call it, like, referred to it as Starbucks, so,
Mm.
so when your company, when the name of your company becomes the verb for the thing that you do, like that is and especially when it's, something that's so, basic in today's world, in terms of which is so basic and so, essential in some ways, in terms of searching for things on the internet. Like, that's a scary level of influence.
Yeah. Well, in terms of truth and information, right?
Right. Right. Sure.
Yeah. So I think, look, you know, I'm a Trump supporter, and but you also know I'm no like I don't think the guy is some kind of like holy genius, but I do like when he says things like illegal. I like the fact that to me he uses hyperbole to influence people. And
Oh,
I
sure.
think I love that. I love that it catches people's attention. It makes people like you and I say, haha, illegal. That's not illegal, but it gets us talking about it.
Well, I mean, I laugh at it, but I don't like that he does. I mean, there are a lot of, he's a smart guy in certain ways, and he understands, and this isn't like being, conspiracy theorist or whatever. I can look up like specific propaganda techniques and show
Oh,
you
yeah.
how he uses those, and he's very effective with those. And so, the whole thing with like illegal, like, he'll put questions out there. It's kind of like the way Fox News, especially, will present a lot of stories where, or Sean Hannity, not necessarily like the regular news anchors, but someone like Hannity, he'll just ask a question. And so it's not slander or libel, because he's presenting it as a question, but it's presented in a way that the audience will be like the audience is in on it, like, oh yeah, I see where, yeah, that's true, I see where you're going there. So so Trump does that in a way that, even though he's not saying that's illegal, by asking the question, people will just automatically infer like, oh, that's wrong. I think that is illegal, you know. So he's got a lot of techniques that, you know, and he does that with certain things, like just hammering in, you know, certain things over, like fake news, rigged witch hunt, all these different things. So I don't like that he does that, but I laugh at it. But you're right, it does have an influence, a big influence.
Should the president of the United States be asking, is it illegal? Should the president of the United States be doing this? No, he shouldn't. But that doesn't keep me from enjoying it.
Well, I mean, I think for people, I mean, you know, if you can like amputate the Trump part of this away from it, if you can like cut that out of it, like the cancer that it is, you can see you can see that there is like it does present a larger thing to think about for people in terms of, even if this wasn't Trump related, you know, Google's power, and we've touched on this before in other podcasts and about different things. You know, supposedly, you know, Google selling access to people's personal email and this, that, and the other. And so it's just one more, you know, just one more cog in sort of the wheel of that discussion about, you know, Google's influence on a larger scale.
Yeah. And I think that would make a good reverse redaction. I think it's something that I would like to dig deeper into, not only discussing, but experimenting with search engine optimization, because as much as they are biased, they're also manipulable. They are you can manipulate their results.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, do you remember when? I guess we remember when Santorum. You Google Santorum and like some kind of disgusting thing would come up.
Yeah, I do.
Like you can, a person or a group of people can easily manipulate the algorithm.
Right.
So it'd be interesting to see like the future of politics. I really like. I don't know why people still do like phone calls and TV ads. They should just be using search engine optimization
For old people.
True that. People that still have TVs.
Yep.
Okay.
And use landlines.
And people still use, like, even old people use landlines?
I think that is becoming less popular, but yeah, people still do. So
someone was telling me they saw a phone booth the other day. I was like, really? Where?
Yeah.
A working phone booth.
Yeah, I saw a joke the other day that said that phone booths are being taken away so that you have fewer places to get out of the Matrix.
Well, that's what I think of anytime anybody talks about a phone booth. I think of the Matrix.
Yeah.
Lastly, was there any news? I want to get your take really quick as far as sports news that we might keep this around, might not, but a short segment at the end where we talk about sports. Two things. It's in LA recently. Do you think? Do you think Kobe will win LA over
LeBron?
I'm sorry. What did I say? Kobe?
You said, you said Kobe.
Freudian slip. Do you think LeBron will win over the LA fans? And two, do you think Des Bryant will get signed anytime soon?
Yes to the first one, no to the second one. Yeah, I think LeBron. I don't really see it as. I mean, not being in LA, it's kind of hard for me to say, but I mean, just kind of knowing sports fans, I think the LA fans will be like on board with him pretty quick. Was there anything out there that suggested to you otherwise? Or?
Over the weekend, he had some murals that were put up that were vandalized. Like a bunch of them were vandalized.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, I think those are probably outliers. You know, I mean, I think the actual LA fans, you got to think though. I mean, this is a city where you've got the Clippers too. So I mean, maybe it's Clippers fans that are going around vandalizing. So it's not like anywhere else he's played in that there's only one team there for that city. But I don't think he'll have any trouble winning over Lakers fans. Lakers fans will just be happy to be relevant again. I mean, hopefully.
Wait, Ball did that, right?
Who?
Ball? What's his name?
Oh, LeVar Lonzo.
Alonzo Ball, didn't he?
LeVar made them more relevant than Lonzo did. But
no, he made them infamous. But here's my take on it is that he will, if he can get them, get them far in the playoffs, like get them seriously winning again, he will win most over. But I believe that I just forgot his name. James. I believe James will always have he will always have a certain taint about him. And I think it's a certain, almost like McCain, there'll always be this certain caricature that people see him as because of the sort of thumb in the eye that people, that people perceive his actions as.
He's always going to have his haters, and part of it too is I think the fact that again, we live in this time where we always love nostalgia, but especially right now with the Trump stuff, and Trump even had his own little feud with LeBron on Twitter. So I'm not like trying to pull Trump into this, like he, started, even if it wasn't for Trump, I mean, people just, there's a lot of debate about, is who's better, Jordan or LeBron. And, with nostalgia in play, LeBron's never going to win that discussion overall. I mean, Jordan, I'm not going to debate the merits of the two, but there's a couple of things. One, nostalgia. Jordan has nostalgia going. And two, he just had so many, he was just so clutch. He had so many clutch moments that even if LeBron could potentially be the all-around better player, Jordan was so clutch, and he was in so many situations to be clutch that it would be hard to ever really replicate his career. So LeBron's never going to win that. Maybe 50 years from now, after, he's gone, and then we look back on him with nostalgia or whatever. But so he's never going to win that in present day. But I think he'll win Lakers fans over pretty easily. But some of the things he did early on, like I don't think he's a bad guy at all. But he was a little bit of a, arrogant jerk with certain things that he did. And especially the decision, people are, that, it kind of became its own little catchphrase and meme of, I'm taking my talents to whatever. So when you become a meme and not for good reasons necessarily, then that's going to be hard to overcome. So, but yeah, to your other point about Dez Bryant, I think Dez, like, it's looking like I didn't get him on any of my fantasy teams. I didn't even use a late. If I could have, I might have used like the very last pick or something on him. But people were like, I don't know. People were like using, I think, like 9th, 10th round picks out of 15 round drafts on him, and there's just he didn't have a team, and there wasn't that much interest. And so what I've read on that was that, I guess, like, basically if you really like dive deep into it and see like what he did as a receiver,
he was a terrible receiver.
He
could not get separation. Well, okay, he's not a terrible receiver. He's not a very good route runner.
Exactly.
Right. All.
Exactly. And so 3 or 4 years ago, he was athletic enough that he could win a lot of, 50-50 jump balls, do all these things. And I mean, the dude, I loved him in fantasy, 4 or 5 years ago, because he was just guaranteed when he was paired with Romo, the guy was going to get, if he stayed healthy, double-digit touchdowns and, 1,200 yards. He was, I felt like, one of the safest bets, but that athleticism, even I think, like, he's just like 29 now. So he's not even like gotten into his 30s, but when you're in the NFL, that athleticism can start to go pretty quickly, especially if you've had injuries. And so he hasn't really, someone compared him to Michael Vick, where, when Michael Vick came into the league, he could have been so much better than what he was, but he never tried to mature as a pocket passer. Just, if things would, get tough or break down, he would just run the ball, because he was always so athletic in college that he could succeed by doing that. And it's kind of the same thing with Dez Bryant. He was just so naturally gifted that he never really bothered to refine some of the other parts of his game. And so now when you pair that with his attitude, where people don't really want to, I mean, the Patriots will take a risk on almost anyone. And the Patriots are desperate for a receiver right now, because they do a good job of bringing people into their culture and minimizing these attitudes. But like, when even they're like, we'll pass, like that's a really bad sign.
Well, I wasn't surprised that the Patriots passed, because they don't like paying people.
True. Yeah, that's true. He wants money too. Money. Yeah, he's looking for money.
And it struck me about 3 years ago when whenever Megatron left, the big three were Dez Bryant, Demaryius Thomas, and Julio Jones. Like, everybody was on, like, these guys were the future of football. And I just remember thinking, like, because I've had Dez Bryant on my team and my fantasy football team for going on, well, not this year, but 5 years before this year, and he has never produced what his value. He's always been boom or bust. He's always been touchdown dependent. Now, he got a lot more touchdowns with Romo, but even that back then, he would have like 4-point games, 4 fantasy point games when he wouldn't catch the touchdowns.
Yeah.
And to my point, though, I got sidetracked. Demaryius Thomas and Julio Jones, same thing. These guys get old, and people still herald them as the top, the best. Right. Like, if you try to say that Julio Jones and Demaryius Thomas, well, now Demaryius, people are but you try to tell people that Julio Jones is not, he's not an elite wide receiver, people freak out. I'm like, come on, the guy's old. Look at, like, what does it take? Does it take watching Demaryius fall apart? Dez Bryant is a clear example of somebody just falling apart. And really, but Dez, I think, of all three of them, just really wasn't very good to start with.
Right. Yeah. So much of his was just based on his athleticism. I think Julio Jones, it's a little bit more complicated. Like, as someone who's, grown up in Georgia and cover, I'm not actually a Falcons fan. So I'm not bringing favoritism in. I was at one point, but I'm just like, all right. I ended up at one point, I've been to far more Colts games than I've been to Falcons games now. So I converted, luckily before the Super Bowl debacle, but Julio, I think that's a little bit more complex, in that, like, Matt Ryan is not a good red zone passer. Like, he's, I don't know if I think it's like, he's got a strong enough arm, but I think my take is that his windup takes a little bit more, like, on it for him to get it there. And in tight spaces in the red zone, it's tougher to do that. And so,
dude, though, I've seen so many Julio. There was not a tight space. He was wide open in the end zone, and it bounced off his hands.
Yeah, he does drop the ball at times. Like he had last year a horrible drop where he was wide open on a bomb pass, and it just like went through his fingers. And then you can find the meme, I think is against the Panthers, and then where he just fell, and then he's just like face down in the end zone with his arms behind him. It just looks like the most inept effort ever. And I think there was a year or two where I took him for fantasy, and then I realized, like, all these other guys are getting, unless he just goes off and, every once in a while he'll have a year where he goes off for like 1,800 yards. But unless he does that, you're just much better going off or going with someone else who's going to get like comparable receptions and yards and much better touchdowns, because last year he had three touchdowns, and, so I took him in, I have him in, I think one league this year, because I got him as like a late second round pick. And the other, like, even like the guys like Keenan Allen and Devontae Adams were gone. And so I'm like, all right, for one team.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Yeah. And so I'm like, for one team at the bottom of the second round, I'll take him and see what happens. Cause I think he'll have a little bit of, progression back on the touchdowns. Maybe even if it's only like 5 or 6, he'll catch a ton of balls and a lot of yards. But anyway, but yeah, just back to your larger point about receivers. It goes quick. It can go quick. And I don't know if Dez is, like, I'm starting to wonder if Dez is going to play again, period, because the longer he goes with this, like now he's like playing it off like, well, I might sign later in the year, almost as if it's like his idea. Like, nah, I just decided I didn't want to, but like he's turned down the Browns, he's turned down the Ravens. And so I don't know.
Yeah. It could be. I remember thinking the same thing about AAP, Adrian Peterson, a couple years ago. I guess maybe it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
No, the year before. It was the year before, because I think he went the whole year without getting signed, and then he finally just took them in with the Saints.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That was, I think, after all of his, it came after some of that domestic violence stuff, and then he came back with Minnesota, and he wasn't great. And then he bounced around from the Saints to the Cardinals.
No, but I think there was a whole year. I think it was back in 2016 where he didn't play at all. Or at least we're getting to this point in the season. Oh, we haven't even started the season, but we're getting to the point where we're thinking, like, will AP play for anybody? And he wasn't. And the problem was, just like Dez, is he didn't want to. I take that back. He, unlike Dez, said that he would play for the minimum.
Yeah.
His pride didn't get in the way.
Right.
I think Dez is too prideful,
right,
to take it, and that could be a reason he doesn't play for the league anymore.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Is he was so. I think he's on like a mission to like show Dallas, like, oh, you really, you screwed up by not re-signing me. But yeah, now I don't know. He's looking for like a 1-year deal. Like, if you start like trying to Venn diagram everything that he wants, where it's like a championship team and a rich deal, but only for 1 year, so that I can get an even bigger deal. And it's got to be, the planets have got to align here. Like, it starts looking pretty unlikely, because is he suddenly going to be able to put his pride aside, or will he just be like, well, I didn't want to play anyway, so.
All right. Well, now that we've ostracized all our non-sports viewers,
right, they can just stop before that.
And we've gone way over time, but it was an interesting conversation. Always glad to talk to you, Jared, and get your take on things, and see your perspective. Always helpful.
Yeah, glad to join you.
All right. Well, have a wonderful day.
All right. You too, Justin.